do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
What's up, everyone? My name is Ethan. This is Courtside TV. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe, and let's get into it. So today I wanted to talk about PJ Tucker because, as we know, he is one of the most sought-after targets on the trade market right now. We're coming up on the trade deadline. It's about 2 weeks away, and we got news just tonight that PJ Tucker has been basically sent home by the Rockets, or maybe he sent himself home, but he's not going to be with the team until they can figure out what to do with him. So there is going to be a trade taking place. That's not going to be a buyout. I mean, the only situation where there would be a buyout is if they didn't have a deal on the table for him, and I'm pretty sure they probably already have multiple deals on the table for PJ Tucker. It just depends on which one they're going to end up taking. So today, I'm just going to go through a list of a couple of teams that might be interested. We had a report of a list of 5 teams that were probably going to be interested in PJ Tucker. So I have made a hypothetical trade for each of these teams, and we're going to go through that and just give you guys where I think PJ Tucker might end up. So we're going to start with the Brooklyn Nets here. This is a team that has been interested in pretty much everybody in the market right now. They have pretty much used up a lot of their trade pieces. This is hard to find a trade for Brooklyn here, unless it involves Spencer Dinwiddie, which is also possible. I don't have that one up here, but Spencer Dinwiddie could be in the move. We know that the Nets have sort of been thinking about trading him at points, even since his injury, just because that's salary on the books that they want to allocate towards getting a real player, because this is championship contention here. So if Dinwiddie's not going to play the rest of the year, they could throw him in, and the Rockets would have to put in another player to make the salary work. It depends on if Houston's interested in re-signing Dinwiddie in the offseason. Maybe there's a pick involved. That's a possibility. If it's not involving Dinwiddie, it basically has to be this, which I feel like is probably a little bit too much value for the Nets to be giving up. Specifically, Luau Cabarrot can play. He's been in the rotation at points. Landry Shamet, also, a guy that they used their first-round pick to trade for him in the offseason. He's a guy who can shoot. We saw him have a good game tonight. Nicholas Claxton, another young guy with some potential to grow, but unless you're putting in a guy that's like really in the rotation, like we're talking like Jeff Green, DeAndre Jordan, who we know that they're going to be reluctant to trade given his friendship with Kyrie and Kevin Durant. Really, this is what they have to give up. Basically, these are the guys at the end of the bench, and they have to put in enough salary to match PJ Tucker's money. If I was the Rockets, I'm saying yes instantly. If this offer comes across the table, I think that's probably about as good as you're going to do. You're not getting picks back, but Shamet and Claxton are both going to be pieces that I think will help Houston in their rebuild here. So if they can do this trade, I think Houston would say yes to this. If I was Brooklyn, I would probably just I just don't think there's an offer out there for PJ Tucker unless it's Spencer Dinwiddie in there. I think it's going to be hard for Brooklyn to put together a realistic package. Next team in this scenario here I have is the Milwaukee Bucks. They could potentially be very interested in PJ Tucker. I've heard this from multiple sources. Kevin O'Connor, I know, mentioned this on a podcast from the other day. This was in a report from Shams, I believe, that the Bucks are interested. So there's some real interest here. This trade does not give up Dante DiVincenzo. I think they do still want to hold on to him. He's a better player than anybody involved here. And we know that he was put in that Bogdanovich thing in the offseason. And, it's tough to rebuild that relationship once you've been in trade rumors so heavily. So maybe they could throw him in. I still think that's a little too much to give up. I think he might be a better player than PJ Tucker right now. I think you could make that argument. Here they're doing DJ Wilson, who's 1 year away from free agency. It's either Bobby Portis or Bryn Forbes. Either one works, just depends on who you'd rather get rid of there. I went with Bobby Portis just because I felt like he probably is not... I think Bryn Forbes raises your ceiling a little bit more with the shooting, but you could decide whichever one, and maybe whichever one Houston prefers. And then I threw in a second-round pick as well to just kind of entice the Rockets to bite. I think this one would probably be a yes on both sides. I'm a little hesitant if I'm Milwaukee to give up, 2 rotation guys and a second-round pick, even though neither of them are like huge parts of the rotation, but that's it could be something, and we know that the Bucks are interested here. And so if I was Milwaukee, I'd probably say yes to this. If I'm Houston, I think I probably would as well. So this gets a yes from me on both sides. We'll just have to see how things shake out. This probably isn't the best offer that Houston could get, but if it comes down to it, I think this is a pretty competitive package. I've got the Miami Heat next up. This one is fairly simple. They have salary to give up. It's either going to be Kelly Olynyk or Myers Leonard. Myers Leonard, as we know, just made himself very expendable based on a couple of things he said on his live stream the other day. This comes down to, do the Rockets want to take him back? He's hurt. I believe he's out for the season, so he's not going to play anyway, and there's a team option for next year. So if the Rockets aren't too worried about the optics of trading for a guy who just did the thing that Myers Leonard did, I think they should, they'd be okay with taking that money back just because they can get him off the books this offseason. It's no harm, no foul, and he becomes a free agent, and PJ Tucker was going to be a free agent anyway. So they're not taking back any long-term money, and we know, that's kind of been a priority for Houston lately. I put in KZ Okpala here and a second-round pick. This is probably not as good as the Milwaukee package, I don't think. Not as good as that Brooklyn package that I had. It's tough for the Heat because they don't actually have a lot of second-round picks to trade. They could throw in another one in 2027, which if it came down to it, they'd probably put that extra second-round pick in there. And they have a couple of other young players, as we know. It's not going to be Tyler Hero in this deal. He's far too valuable. Kendrick Nunn, maybe. I think there's even a chance of Duncan Robinson. Don't come for me on that one, but simply because he's going to be a free agent this offseason, who knows how much the Heat are willing to pay him. Now, I don't think it'll probably come to that, but I think there is a reality where Miami shops Duncan Robinson a little bit just because he's going to be a free agent and he might want a little more than they're willing to pay. So we'll just have to see. For now, I didn't put him in there. You could also maybe talk about Chris Silva, who's a guy. Precious Achiuwa probably won't be in there. So KZ Okpala really is the only guy here that I could see them, really being willing to part with. And then this second round pick, thinking about it more, they probably should throw in another second if they really want to make this a competitive package. But yeah, it's basically just matching salary, whether that's Leonard or Olynyk or even Andre Iguodala could potentially be that piece, and just some young talent and picks, and that's what's going to have to happen for Miami to get this deal done here. Like I said, this package as it stands, not as good as either of the two I just mentioned, but potentially Miami has the ability to sweeten the pot even more if they really want to go all in. We'll have to see just how desperate they are to get Tucker at the deadline. Next, we have the Denver Nuggets, and this is where it gets interesting because I think potentially this could come down to who is willing to throw in a first-round draft pick. And I have Denver doing it here simply because I don't think that they have quite enough oomph in terms of young prospects that they'd be willing to put into this trade. And they're a team that knows they're going to be in the playoffs, and so throwing in a protected first-round pick here is not the end of the world if that's going to be, late 20s, mid-20s, whatever that is. So they basically have to make up this salary here by throwing in Isaiah Hartenstein, PJ Dozier, and Vlatko Kankar. Those three enough, they make up enough money. You could also talk about Zeke Naji or RJ Hampton or Bol Bol. Any of those could be subbed in for this first round pick, and that's also a competitive offer because if you're Denver, you're probably not going to want to put in Michael Porter Jr., that's for sure. I don't think they want to put in Campazzo after the season that he's had. There's a couple of other young guys on this roster, and even the three that I said before, that Denver is probably going to have reservations about including in a trade. Again, it just depends on how badly they're going to want PJ Tucker here. So I have them throwing in a first round pick because I think out of all of these teams here, they'd probably be one of the more willing because they still have their own draft pick this year, and they'd be like, okay, this is going to be a late first round pick. We already have a lot of young talent on this roster. Let's try to go for it and bring in a veteran type player. And then these other guys at the end of the bench just get thrown in to make up the money here. It's actually Isaiah Hartenstein going back to Houston, which is kind of funny. But this trade, I think makes sense for both sides. Like I said, it's probably going to come down to who puts in the first round pick. For Houston, you're going to be waiting for that first round pick to come across the table, waiting for that offer to be called in. And as soon as it happens, I think they'd probably say yes. So this is a deal, if I'm Houston, that I would definitely probably say yes to. Honestly, you're not getting a lot in terms of young talent, but that first round draft pick is better than any second round picks you're going to get. So unless you're getting, a young prospect from another team that you think is better than, the 25th pick in the draft or whatever it is, then this is a pretty good offer. And the final team I have here is the LA Lakers, and they also have a pretty hard time in finding the right amount of contracts and picks in order to put in here. I have them giving up 3 second-round picks because as far as players go, this is about as bottom of the barrel as you're going to get. Alfonso McKinney, into the bench guy. Wesley Matthews, Jared Dudley, veterans, don't really fit what the Rockets are trying to do, but they have to be here to make up salary. Like, unless the Lakers are throwing in, like, Montrezl Harrell or Kyle Kuzma or Alex Caruso, which I don't think they want to do on any of those guys, or Talen Horton-Tucker is the other guy. You know, if you put him in instead of these second-round picks, I think you might have a deal. But do the Lakers want to go there? I don't think they do. I think they value Horton-Tucker probably more than PJ Tucker. So it's a question of, you know, if they throw in Talen Horton-Tucker, I think they have a deal. But if not, it's really tough because there's no other young player on the roster with value other than Kyle Kuzma, but he already signed his extension, and it looks like the Lakers probably want to keep him around, and I wouldn't deal him for Tucker here. So you've got, you just got these old veterans. Like I said, Jared Dudley, Wesley Matthews don't really fit the Rockets timeline. They're going to just be done at the end of the season anyway. Alfonso McKinney is, basically just here for salary. He's nothing as a player. So you're really just doing this for the picks here, and that's why they have to put in 3 because the players are just nothing. So the only reason Houston would accept this is if they didn't have any of the other aforementioned offers on the table, because the Lakers could, push the envelope and include some of, like, Talen Horton-Tucker or maybe a first-round pick from next year. But I think that's probably farther than they're willing to go. And so in that case, I think any of the 4 teams ahead of them or any other team that might be interested, there's going to be lots, could probably come up with a better offer than this. So Lakers, while it's possible, I just don't foresee this happening just because it's really, the offer is not great compared to what I think PJ Tucker's probably going to be worth to a lot of other teams. So those are the 5 that we had reported from Shams and a couple other places. There have been other teams that have been reported as landing spots, but I'm not going to go through all of them in this video. Specifically, I just took a look at the standings. I mean, this is not a comprehensive list. I think pretty much every contender has some level of interest here, but the Sixers, the Celtics, maybe even the New York Knicks, the Suns, I think the Jazz also were rumored, I know that, Clippers, Blazers, the Warriors have that disabled player exception, he could slide right in there. I mean, maybe the Mavericks even. You could go through pretty much every contender and even like fringe contender in the league and make like a valid reason to trade for PJ Tucker. He's just a veteran who slides right into the system. He knows how to play. He's been on successful teams in the past. So I think, and the contract is not too hard to trade for. You have to, throw in 2 to 3 players at the end of your rotation, cobble them together, maybe throw in a young player, draft picks, and you've got, a package for him. So I think those 5 teams that I already talked about are, they'd probably be interested, but I think there's a lot of other teams that are also going to be interested. So it's just going to be, it'll be fun the next couple weeks to see where he's going to end up, because I think, there's a lot of teams out there, so we'll just have to wait and see. That's about all I have on the Rockets and PJ Tucker. Like I said at the top of the video, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, ring the bell if you want to, leave a comment letting me know what you guys think about PJ Tucker, where will he be traded, and if you want to see any other players you would like me to do this with. There's been plenty of trade buzz leading up to the deadline. We're going to be going hard on trade deadline stuff for the next couple of weeks, because that's what I love talking about, and that's what the NBA is going on right now. So with all that said, I will see you guys in the next one.